Grab your printer ink, Wargamers, because today we are reviewing 2x2 Napoleonics, a free set of Napoleonic battle rules which you can find online. Link in the description. Written by Rod Humble, with additions by John Rigsby and Eric Sprague. I've just printed up the first page because I'll refer to it electronically on the game table. My next video will be a preliminary trial run of these rules, which I've already played and already filmed. I'm just showing you the review first to help you decide whether you want to watch that video. These rules are probably the grandest and biggest scale battle rules that I have ever played. As you can see, I'm using 2mm figures. You'll see more of these in 2 days when we take these rules for a test spin. In the meantime, I wanted to give you an idea what the rules are like. And these rules, I'm just going to read directly. They differentiate themselves by two core mechanics. One, the glue of war. This is the trait that Napoleonic infantry, to refuse to budge once it had started firing at an enemy. This made the commitment of units an important decision, as the general was unlikely to regain control over them again for some time. The commitment of units is an important decision. I like that. Decision points are important in miniature war games. The second distinguishing characteristic is the evolving battlefield. Napoleonic battles were rarely set-piece battles. Units would arrive in clumps and make their way towards the front, often arriving from the flanks. This gives a very different feel than a battle where the units are all lined up facing each other at the start. Which leads us into a brief description of the rules. As you can see, these units are based on 1-inch squares. I've got British line infantry here. Please ignore the formation that you see here. I know the British rarely fought with this kind of formation, at least in a brigade situation. Actually, I should walk that back. I don't know how they fought. I don't have a whole lot of experience with these rules and may be doing a number of things wrong. We're learning as we go. That's part of the fun of miniature wargaming, is learning these things and teaching yourselves and doing the research. If you're not interested in doing research, maybe historical miniatures aren't for you. And to that end, these rules don't have a whole lot of background material. You're kind of on your own. Well, I shouldn't say that. We have a whole bunch of other videos out there and a lot of books to go to. You're not on your own. There's armies of people ready to help you through. The point is, this is a brigade, and this is the maneuver element of 2x2 Napoleonics. So called because you play on a 2-foot by 2-foot board. We have light infantry, heavy infantry, a couple of cannons here with baggage train. This is the leaders. See the few little guys in front, and here are your guards or grenadiers, who I've mounted in a block more as an attack column. At any rate, those are your maneuver elements, and one of the things that happens in this game, it's fairly typical, right? Whether you have a single 25mm figure on here and you're playing a skirmish, or a whole brigade. In this case, I think I have, let me do some quick math here, 24, I probably have about 60 individual figures on this. That represents my 600-man brigade. 1/10 ratio is pretty darn good. These guys move and shoot as a brigade. You don't have to worry so much about attack column, line, march, and form square. All of that stuff is assumed to be handled within this unit by the individual brigade commander. You're the general when you play 2x2 Napoleonics. You're mainly interested in trying to get the right brigades to the right place at the right time. When they talk about the evolving battlefield, the interesting aspect about this game is that you start with 1/4 of your force on the table. The rest of your force, if you are the defender, let's say you're defending this line, you will choose one reinforcement point and however many figures you want to come in there. Then the attacker gets to choose a reinforcement point, and he can choose his side of the battlefield or the flanks. So he may decide to put a reinforcement point there with a number of units. Then the defender picks his secondary reinforcement point, and it can be, hey, maybe we'll refuse the left flank. Maybe we'll go for something a little broader. He may put all of his cavalry around here, hoping to bring them on for a sweeping move. You, as the general, are assumed to have ordered your cavalry to approach the battle from this direction. Once again, if the enemy wants to go with a strong attack on his right flank, he'll put both of his reinforcement points here. But he'll only get 1 unit per turn coming in. That forces him to make a decision. Do I want to accumulate enough group maneuver elements here and bring them up at once, or do I just feed brigades in piecemeal? There's a lot of decision points that you have to deal with at the start of the game. And then once the game gets started, you kind of have to take what you get. It's a fascinating look at how to give the player a modicum of control over the strategy without having the usual kind of bird's eye view, 100% omnipotent understanding of what's going on the battlefield. That little bit of uncertainty. When am I getting reinforcements? Where are they coming from? Are they all going to come from 1 point, or will they come from 2? It's fantastic. It takes a lot of the ebb and flow of the battle out of your hands as the general and puts it into the hands of fate. You got to roll with your punches. I love that about this game. Aside from that, it is fairly standard in how it approaches things. Your elements can move and they shoot and they've got a range. The infantry have a range of just 1 inch. So for the most part, they'll close to 1 inch and start shooting. Maybe they'll close to melee. Melee is resolved almost immediately. There's no record keeping. Your troops have either fired, in which case they are pinned, or they have routed, in which case they are disrupted. If they get contacted when disrupted, they're at a serious disadvantage in melee. So the overall strategy, as you might expect, is to try to get them disrupted and then hammer them with cavalry to basically ride them down. Very historical. Likewise, your guns are either light or heavy, and they have a long range. Once they have fired, they can't move anymore until a general comes up and relieves them of that pinning, but you probably, once you get them in position, not going to want to move them anyway, so it's not such a big deal with them. Your generals have a command radius of 6 inches. They can relieve the pinning on any figure within that 6 inches. If they are directly contacting, that would be a +1. So, the general, you're going to have to pick. Do I want him in the center to have a strong center? Do I want him on one or the other flank? You may decide to put your general where you need the most flexibility. Over here, in this case, as we see, on the left flank, and these guys over here, once they get stuck in, they're kind of on their own, so they'll hold in place, and you're going to try to push through over here. So you get a nice ebb and flow, and you may be able to get cavalry to circle down through here and come at them from the back. So it's a fantastic game because you do get that back and forth. As I said, you'll see that in my next video. That's about all. I went ahead and made up, if you go to the link in the description and look this up, he actually has it in a couple of different formats, HTML, Word, I think RTF, rich text format. So you can print it up to your heart's desire. The different colors here are indicative of who wrote the rules. So Rod Humble wrote the basic rules, and then John Rigsby came through and added in his little additions, and they're fantastic. They add such things as large units. Apparently the Russians were well known for having brigades that had twice as many people as the other Western powers. And again, Eric Sprague went through and added a few things as well. So solid team effort. This is the way Wargaming works. One guy throws something out there, other people add to it, keep bolting on your own. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to use this for Napoleonics. I'm going to use it for an Imaginations campaign. It kind of is Napoleonic, but kind of not. Specifically, the figures that I have are actually designed for the Wars of Marlborough. Man, stick a pin in that. We got to talk about that in a later video. These figures come with one kind of artillery, and unfortunately, at the 2mm scale, I'm guessing this is foot artillery and not horse artillery. So in the campaign that I'm running, I'm not going to have a distinction between heavy and light cavalry. Look at these 2mm. They even have their little fire pot right there. A teeny little pot. And that's why I'm not necessarily calling this Napoleonic. It's not necessarily 7 Years' War either. It's kind of somewhere in that vague black powder, what would you call it? The Imaginations era, right? Ruritania is marching to war against the Elbonians. Although in my case, it's going to be 5 other countries. More on that later. Long story short, these 3 guys have put together a solid rule set that's not quite what I'm looking for, so I'm tweaking it for myself. However, that said, I went ahead and made up a quick reference sheet with some lovely artwork. Just for the record, the scale is 1 inch equals 100 yards, 100 to 200. I love that kind of vagueness. And 1 turn equals 30 minutes. So a formation of line infantry can move 3 inches in formation over 30 minutes. That's 300 yards in 30 minutes. That seems a little slow to me, but what do I know? I guess it's harder to march in formation. All of the rules that I need are right here, laminated for ease of coffee staining, and we're off to the races. They actually provide this at the website, and I went ahead and formatted it in a slightly more usable format for me, complete with typos here and there, which hopefully you'll never notice. Solid rule set, free rule set, download, print yourself a copy if you're at all interested in Napoleonics, and there's no reason why you can't upscale this to 2x2 or 4x4 if you have larger miniatures, or you want to make this light cavalry brigade. I've got, to distinguish mine, I've got 18 versus 24 for my light versus my heavy cavalry. I even went ahead and labeled the back. Wait a minute, I'm not done with these Brits because I still got to label the backs of them. But I don't have to label it. I don't have to. I'm gonna because it's easier. But I can tell that this is heavy cavalry because it's got a lot more guys, and they're in a much tighter formation than this light cavalry. They also allow for light infantry and what else can I tell you? You know, different terrain, all the usual rule aspects, and a tidy little box. If you're into Napoleonics, if you're into Marlborough, I highly recommend give them a shot, particularly if you'd like to play Napoleon himself and command corps, not just small wings of a dozen guys representing a platoon here, a dozen guys representing a company there. This is the real deal. You'll wind up with about 15 to 20 maneuver elements, which is just the right amount for your war games. Give it a shot. You won't recommend it. In the meantime, I'll see you in 2 days where I can show you exactly how this game works. And until those 2 days expire, I'm praying for you.